Before I introduce today's guest, I want to tell you about our one and only sponsor or advertiser. It's the GreatCoursesPlus.com app that you can get on your phone, and you can access there. It's a subscription model, so you can access thousands of courses and therefore tens of thousands of lectures, like one here on George Orwell that I listen to, in which then you scroll through and listen to whichever lectures you want, any or all of them. They go in sequence. You can just queue it up and start going, and it goes lecture after lecture. You can see the green ones that I listen to and the other ones I have yet to listen to. It's a great system because instead of buying an entire course and then maybe you like some of it, maybe you don't like any of it or just parts of it, and you want to skip on to the next course, you can do that with this app on your phone. And so those who are listening to the podcast and access it through me, you get a $30 off for the annual plan, and you get a free trial, and it comes out to $10 a month. So that's like 2.5 venti lattes at Starbucks for infinite knowledge, accessible on your phone. It's a great deal. And this is the sole sponsor of the podcast, other than the umbrella of the Skeptic Society that we're under. I'm not going to bring on here, my favorite pillow advertisers and guns and gold and whatever else supports podcasts. It's really the great courses, and I have them on because I use them all the time. I listen to these lectures, and content consumption is something we're all doing in the pandemic, and this is really the best source I've found. So give it a shot. Go to greatcoursesplus.com/Shermer. That's greatcoursesplus.com/Shermer. You get the $30 off and the free trial, $10 a month for the year. Great deal. Thanks for listening. Welcome to the Michael Shermer Show. I'm Michael Shermer. Before we return to our regularly scheduled guests this week, I wanted to offer another commentary on my commentary, Trump and Truth. This one I'm calling Politics and Truth, because I received a lot of interesting and constructive response to that commentary on the events of January 6th, 2021, the storming of the Capitol by Trump supporters. So this is a scripted commentary this time, and I'll post the text with it. So let's get one thing out of the way first. There seems to be a number of people who actually think that these were not Trump supporters at all, but rather Antifa activists dressed up as Trump supporters in a form of crisis actors, a la the risibly ridiculous conspiracy theory promulgated by Alex Jones that the Sandy Hook school shooting was a false flag operation conducted by the Obama administration in order to enact gun laws to confiscate Americans' firearms. Imagine if you were the parent of one of these slain children, crushed in emotional loss, grieving in existential agony, only to have some conspiratorial asshole scream in your face that your so-called child was actually just a crisis actor pretending to die. How any of these parents did not lose all control and go after these schmucks with extreme violence is beyond me. In the popular idiom, they showed the patience of Job. I should note, parenthetically, that as a result of the Sandy Hook massacre and the concomitant conspiracy theories about gun control, gun and ammunition sales skyrocketed to an all-time high after this event. So much for conspiracies. Just in case anyone thinks there might be something to this rigged election conspiracy, hundreds of people who stormed the Capitol have now been arrested, and most of them have a long trail of social media posts confirming their allegiance to the 45th President of the United States, to the point that many of them are now begging Trump for a pardon, arguing that in charging the Capitol, breaking windows and doors, assaulting the Capitol Police, and murdering several people in the process, they were doing the president's bidding. At this point, anyone who would join a Fair Play for Trump Supporters Committee has lost all touch with reality. What happened on January 6, 2021 was unquestionably, undeniably, and dare I say unskeptically the result of Donald J. Trump. I realize that legally it might be difficult to prove in a trial that Trump should be held at least partially responsible for what unfolded from his words. But in so arguing, people making this case, including some who have written me long emails explaining why my counterfactual causality argument, that is, but for Trump's speech that morning, there would have been no storming of the Capitol, wouldn't stand in a court of law, misses the larger picture. No one who is not blind cannot fail to see that Trump had a role in what happened that day. Recall that Trump urged tens of thousands of his sycophant followers to be strong and show strength in confronting Mike Pence and other politicians because we want to get this right, because we're going to have somebody in there, Biden, that should not be in there, and our country will be destroyed, and we're not going to stand for that. Oh, really? And he said, we're stuck with a president, Biden, who lost this election by a lot, and we have to live with that for 4 more years. We're just not going to let that happen. You don't say. And so they marched down Pennsylvania Avenue to the Capitol to stop the steal. This after 4 years of Trump's dissembling, duplicity, mendacity, and outright lying. Orders of magnitude more lies than any president has ever told, possibly more lies than all other presidents combined. Let's be clear. Every Republican state and federal representative connected to the election, from city and county election officials and politicians up to the top cop Attorney General Bill Barr and Vice President Mike Pence, both of whom are devoted loyalists to Trump, most of whom who voted for Trump and would be, if so inclined, motivated to see Trump win, nonetheless say that the election was fair and that Trump lost. QED. By the way, how did Trump reward Barr and Pence for their unwavering loyalty to him? Barr was forced to resign shortly after he declared the election fair, and Pence was given the choice by Trump that morning to either be a patriot or a pussy. Was this just more locker room talk along the lines of Trump's Hollywood Access tape boasts that he's so famous he can grab women by the pussy? I guess we've come full circle now. To his credit, Pence chose to be a patriot and not go against the Constitution, to which he swore an oath to defend and protect, unlike his boss. Despite what some of my correspondents think, I'm not anti-conservative, nor am I anti-Republican. I have my differences with them, which I'll explicate in another commentary, and over the years, I've also expressed my differences with liberals. But frankly, at this moment in time, conservatives and Republicans have much to answer for. While the assault on the Capitol was unfolding, and contrary to his promise that he would march down Pennsylvania Avenue with them, Trump was, as he apparently spends most of his days doing, watching television, specifically the storming of the Capitol he was sworn to defend. Did he condemn the violence? No, he let it unfold until he saw the backlash against him by his own party loyalists. Like when Goering and Himmler bailed on Hitler in the bunker in the final days of World War II. And out of desperation, Trump issued a scripted teleprompter speech that was indistinguishable from one of those hostage videos in which the captive reads a statement while blinking out a secret message. I don't mean any of this. In fact, the next day, aides reported that he told them that he regretted making the video. What does that tell you about his character? As a result, a Washington Post ABC News poll on January 15th found that 66% of Republicans believe that Trump behaved responsibly since the election, while 65% say they believe there is solid evidence that the election was stolen. To date, none have provided any evidence whatsoever, solid or not, because there is none. Nevertheless, as a result of this false belief, by a margin of 2-1, Republicans say they are no longer confident in the integrity of the electoral system overall. How will that play out in future elections is anyone's guess. You wouldn't think it could get any worse for conservatives, but it can. A 2019 YouGov poll found that 56% of self-identified Republicans think it is probably true or definitely true that President Barack Obama, the first African-American president, was illegitimate because he was born in Kenya. This is beyond delusional. Anyone who believes any of this codswallop has lost their minds. If you believe this, you've gone off the rails. You're no longer operating in the real world. If you're a conservative or Republican, please consider this thought experiment I proposed on Twitter on January 13th. If Obama lost to Mitt Romney in 2012 and refused to acknowledge the election as legitimate, then spent months promoting on Twitter and Facebook that he won the election in a landslide and that Romney and the Republicans stole the election, and then on the day the Electoral College votes were to be counted in Congress, Obama held a mass rally near the Capitol and told a mob of Antifa hotheads to march down Pennsylvania Avenue and go to the Capitol and be strong with the weak congressmen and senators, and to show strength and that our country will be destroyed and we're not going to stand for that, and that with Romney we're stuck with a president who lost the election by a lot, and we have to live with that for 4 more years, and we're just not going to let that happen. And this was followed by an Antifa storming of the Capitol, resulting in 5 dead. Do you think Fox News and right-wing media would be claiming that it wasn't Obama's fault, that he had nothing to do with the violence, and that the biggest story of the week is that Twitter and Facebook kicked him off their platforms? As I'm recording this on January 17th, it has come to light that it appears the Capitol assault was much more organized and pre-planned than it seemed that day, which in my causal analysis could reduce Trump's complicity, unless he was behind what appears to be pre-planning for the assault. As many Trump supporters traveled great distances and brought with them weapons and other paraphernalia, such as zip ties used to subdue perpetrators of violence and or hostages. One guy posted on his social media that he planned to subdue the Speaker of the House, Nancy Pelosi, tie her up, and then execute her on national television. All year, conservatives have been lambasting liberals for the extreme actions of Antifa in the rioting and looting of major cities like Portland and Seattle. Well, what goes around comes around, and now conservatives have to answer for these Trump extremists. There is still much we don't know about the events of January 6th. It is disturbing to discover, for example, that the day before, January 5th, there were some tours of the Capitol building, which because of COVID-19 had been shut down for months. What were those people doing there, and who let them in? As I wrote in a tweet on January 14th when that story broke, wouldn't it be conspiratorially wild if it turned out that 1-6 was an inside job, that Trump either MyHop made it happen on purpose, or LIHOP let it happen on purpose, paste the 9/11 inside job conspiracy theories? We'll see how that pans out. It's too soon to tell, and I don't want to be conspiratorially paranoid. But if true, it would increase Trump's complicity, inasmuch as he swore an oath to protect and defend the Constitution of the United States. And as commander-in-chief, if he knew about the mob's plans for that day and merely let it happen, even sans his speech that morning, he would be in deep legal trouble. One correspondent wrote to me to say that, quote, "Your writings have always been interesting to me intellectually on most subjects and worthy of reading for the progressive view," he put that in quotes, "on ideology subjects. The recent video commentary was not in the same construct and very biased politically to my reading." Here's my response to that correspondent. If you're reading me for the progressive view on ideology subjects, you've got the wrong guy. I am anything but progressive. I'm not even really a liberal, at least according to mainstream liberals. I've said in countless interviews, articles, op-eds, podcasts, and especially my books, that I'm a libertarian, or now a classical liberal, given how extreme some libertarians have become. I've been so publicly critical of progressive, leftists, the woke crowd, the BLM movement, etc., that most of my readers consider me to be anything but progressive. So I'm not sure how you got that impression. In the podcast episode, I stated toward the end that we really need a good, solid conservative candidate in 2024 so that the liberals don't take the country too far left. Other readers accuse me of ignoring what they saw as the big story of the week, that Twitter kicked Trump off their platform. If you think that is the biggest story of the week, again, your vision is out of focus. That is most assuredly not the story of the week. The storming of the Capitol is the story. In fact, as Jack Dorsey said in a statement made on January 16th, Trump was banned because of the violence he incited on January 6th. If the banning were purely politically motivated, Dorsey went on to say, they would have banned Trump long before. In fact, social media has bent over backward to enable Trump to exercise his free speech rights and privileges on their platform. It was only when Trump's followers, charged with riotous emotions and filled with anger, believing that the election was stolen and that the United States itself was about to be destroyed if they didn't do something today, and charged into the Capitol and started rampaging, looting, rioting, and murdering people, that Twitter finally, and at long last, said, enough. I understand their decision, although as for censorship in principle, I'm against it. And that day I made the point that I disagreed with Twitter's decision to ban Trump, and I tweeted about it several times. My latest book, Giving the Devil His Due, is a vigorous defense of free speech, and not just against government censorship, but private censoriousness as well. That said, if I were the CEO of a major social media tech company responsible for the communications of billions of people, one of whom was using my platform to publish provable lies about the 2020 election that led, at least indirectly, to violence at the heart of our nation's democracy, I can't say that I would not have made the same decision. Quite a few people who are longtime readers of Skeptic magazine and supporters of the Skeptic Society were concerned that I had used this platform to promote my personal political beliefs and that this has nothing to do with science, critical thinking, and skepticism. Well, I beg to differ. If, for example, my commentary defended, say, a flat tax instead of a progressive tax, or some specific immigration policy or a foreign relations policy issue, that would be purely political and not appropriate for what we do at Skeptic. There's no way for science to adjudicate precisely what the right tax rate or correct immigration policy should be. Should the upper bracket income tax be 37% as it is today, or 77% as it was nearly a century ago? I don't know. There is no correct answer to that question. Naturally, like most people, I would personally prefer to pay lower taxes, but I recognize the necessity of funding government to solve collective action problems, like interstate highways, infrastructure, the military, police, courts, legislation especially, to help people who cannot help themselves, like the unemployed, homeless, and mentally ill. But these issues are hashed out not in peer-reviewed scientific journals, but by interested parties at election time, and then sorted out in debates and votes in Congress. What my commentary was about was truth, specifically the verisimilitude of the conspiracy theory that the 2020 election was rigged, fraudulent, or stolen. Conspiracy theories are very much in the wheelhouse of Skeptic magazine, and whether a particular conspiracy is true or false very much matters, as we saw on January 6th, and as we've seen throughout 2020, as BLM activists protested and then rioted in major cities like Seattle and Portland. Finally, I'd like to comment on what it means to believe something. If you truly believe that the election was stolen, or that America is a racist cesspool with cops driving around targeting African Americans, then it's understandable why people would protest. And unfortunately, peaceful protest can easily morph into violent rioting when emotions wrest control from reason. As I wrote in a tweet on January 16th, if you came home and saw strangers in your house stealing your stuff, you would of course want to do something about it. Call the police, get a gun, or get friends to storm your home to stop the steal. This is why the stolen election conspiracy theory must be debunked again and again. Thus, the truth or falsity of a claim of any kind that can be adjudicated by science and reason applies not just to astrologers, psychics, UFO proponents, and Bigfoot hunters, all of which we cover in Skeptic, but to conspiracy theories, especially and including those in the realm of politics, economics, and ideology, which, as we've seen, matters very much to the stability of our democracy and trust in the institutions that keep society stable. Allow me to end this commentary with a quote from one of my intellectual heroes, Thomas Jefferson, from his first inaugural address on March 4th, 1801, which followed a bitter and rancorous election against the incumbent president, John Adams, who, by the way, did not attend Jefferson's inauguration. Quote from Jefferson, "All, too, will bear in mind this sacred principle, that though the will of the majority is in all cases to prevail, that will, to be rightful, must be reasonable, that the minority possess their equal rights, which equal laws must protect, and to violate would be oppression. Let us then, fellow citizens, unite with one heart and one mind. Let us restore to social intercourse that harmony and affection without which liberty, and even life itself, are but dreary things. And let us reflect that having banished from our land that religious intolerance under which mankind so long bled and suffered, we have gained yet little if we countenance a political intolerance as despotic, as wicked, and capable of as bitter and bloody persecutions." Close quote from Jefferson. Well, here's hoping for a smooth and peaceful transition of power on January 20th, 2021. Thanks for listening.